afternoon, folks. My name is Ian Berry, and it's my pleasure to host this Sparkenation Conversation. A Sparkenation is a term that I introduced in my book, Changing What's Normal, and what it means is it's a spark that ignites passion, that leads to action, that changes what's normal. And that's the objective of these conversations, and they are conversations rather than presentations. We don't do slides, although because Paul has got some stunning pictures, I've kind of relaxed the rules a little bit, and I'm going to allow Paul to show those three pictures. But normally we don't do slides. It's all about the conversation. And as I said, we don't do long introductions either. I'm sure you all know who Paul is, but it's my pleasure to introduce Paul to you as my special guest today. Paul's from First Contact. I've worked with Paul for I think about 5 or 6 years now, Paul.
Yeah, easily.
Paul's also a member of my Heart Leadership online community. Paul's based in Singapore, and he's recently completed a course actually in our topic for today, which is about delivering the experience. But because of First Contact, who are the best that I know of in providing concierge services in the world, Paul already knows a lot about the customer experience, but he also knows a lot about the employee experience. So Paul, welcome today. I'm going to hand straight over to you for a little overview, including your three wonderful pictures.
Yeah, thanks. And there may be one slide, Ian, if I can get away with that. But right. It's also good to point out that we do have the team that actually runs First Contact Australia in the meeting today. So hopefully we'll get some great contribution and input from them as well.
Terrific. And that's the idea. Paul's going to give us an overview. And I've got a series of questions that Paul and I have talked about that are relevant for the topic. But the idea is this is a conversation. It's Paul's going to present a little bit, but the most important thing is it's a conversation. So feel welcome to come in, ask a question, make a comment at any stage. So Paul, welcome once again. Over to you.
As a conversation starter, thanks, Ian. I might share my first picture, and hopefully you can all see that. So this is the. Have you got that, Ian?
I have got that. Yes.
Excellent. So this is the new Apple store in Singapore. You may have seen pictures of it. And it's the only floating Apple store in the world. So this will be one of the most Instagram buildings in Asia. It opened last month in the middle of a pandemic. This store will never cover its costs. In fact, I estimate that it would need to sell its entire inventory every day just to pay the rent. But that doesn't actually matter. If you think of it as the world's most expensive interactive billboard, it makes sense. The truth is, if you're the manager of any Apple store, they don't even tell you the sales figures for your store. Revenue and sales at store level are not a KPI. In fact, Apple store managers are assessed on one thing, and that's the measurement of experience. As the world's most cash valuable company, Apple doesn't care whether you buy their products in store, at JB Hi-Fi or online. The store becomes an experience center rather than a shopfront. It's a place for customers to interact with the products and for the company to imprint its brand through experiences. And I think this is a great model for future retail post-COVID. The Apple Store single KPI metrics relate to one question, and that is how satisfied are customers with the experience that they had in store. So when I was a GM of a hotel, I took a similar approach with my team, and I asked them one question, and that was, what do we want our guests to be thinking or saying to themselves or feeling after they've stayed with us? And we made that single question driving all the leaders from the front office manager to housekeeping to the head chef. So part of today's discussions around customer experience, and just really quickly, to get there, it's important to understand the difference between customer experience and customer service. So customer experience is emotional. It's all about how a customer feels after or during their engagement with your company. Customer service is more functional. It's about what a customer expects you to do and relates to the process. So it's actually possible for a company to excel in customer service and still fail to deliver a memorable or meaningful experience. And one of the biggest reasons that CX is becoming so critically important is actually sameness. There's so much sameness in the world. One bank is providing the same products and services as another. The latest iPhone is pretty much exactly the same as a Samsung and roughly the same price. So the only way a company can differentiate in a world dominated by sameness is through experience. What was the experience of buying the phone? How easily was it unpacking and setting it up? How easily did it sync with your other devices? And what was the support like when something went wrong? So we can see that CX is now the only way for businesses to differentiate and to win or retain customers. So this is my next image that I'd like to share, and this one's been getting a lot of traction last month, as it was exactly 20 years ago. And for those who, if that doesn't make you feel old enough, in 2000, neither Samsung or Apple were in the phone business. It was dominated then by Nokia and Ericsson. But Sydney 2000 was regarded as, and is still regarded as, the best staging of the Olympic Games in history. And it was designed around delivering an amazing experience for both athletes and spectators. But right at this moment, when they were lighting the flame, Australia held its breath, and in front of a global TV audience, the Olympic flame mechanism got stuck. And Kathy Freeman, if we remember, she was just standing there for what seemed like forever, and then it was all okay. But one thing I really do remember is watching the TV presenter interviewing Rick Birch, who was the producer of the ceremony, just minutes before it all started. And the interviewer asked him how he was feeling. And what he said then has stayed with me. He said, "It's no longer up to me." He said, "It's now in the hands of the performers, the crew, and the segment directors. If something goes wrong out there tonight, there's not a lot I can do from up here." And that's a profound statement coming from the man responsible for delivering the biggest show on Earth, about to be televised live to the entire planet. Yet there's a reality in that statement that rings true for anybody responsible for leading front of house teams. And that is, if we've prepared well, selected the right talent, given them the tools, training and purpose to succeed, then we also have to trust that in the moment, they'll make good decisions, solve problems, and perform their roles in line with the desired outcome. So I think about this a lot. And over the years, I've worked to demystify CX delivery for front of house teams. I'm a bit obsessive about the relationship between employee experience and customer experience. And recently I've been working on this model that I call the 4 E's. Now, you're actually the first people to see this. It's a work in progress. In fact, this is one of the first times I've workshopped it with a group. So I call it engage, excite, equip, empower. So first we engage, we've got to recruit and retain the right people. At first contact, we look for a high level of emotional intelligence, the ability to anticipate and exceed guest expectations, a natural tendency to want to make someone else's day better. And we use culture to make sure we hold on to the right people and not the wrong ones. So after we've engaged, we need to excite. We need to get them excited behind a goal or a set of values. And this is where the destination statement or service promise come into play. An example of, like, how do we want our guests to feel? So we have a set of values we call genes, which are more a way of being rather than a way of doing. So once we've got them excited, we need to equip them. We've got to give them the tools, the training, the technology, and the process to succeed. Processes should remove roadblocks and obstacles, and ultimately we should make service easy, both for our staff and our customers. So once we've engaged, excited, and equipped our team, then I think this is the most important. We need to empower them, which means basically get out of their way. We need to let them do their job their way, and we need to allow their personality and their initiative to shine. So that's my 4 E's. And like I said, it's a work in progress, but I think if we can apply the principles of this model consistently, we can go a long way towards delivering a consistently worthy customer experience. So might leave it at that point, Ian, and see what we all think of that. And is this something that we do already? Is this something that people do already?
Well, there were 2 things that jumped out for me, Paul, and I think that's maybe a good place to start the conversation. If you could just stop sharing screen, Paul, so we can all go. There we are. 2 things fascinated me. One was that you can get a tick for service and a cross for experience. I reckon that's the case for lots of organisations who are still in the 20th century mode, where their customer service is okay, but their experience is lousy, and people don't go back there.
There's plenty of places where they're doing everything by the book and following all the procedures to the letter, but it's quite evident that they don't care.
So that's the first spot I'd maybe kick off from. The second one, which I found even more valuable, was I think you said that you call your values genes,
Mm.
and that it's more about ways of being more than ways of doing. And I think that's a profound insight. There are many organizations that have values, but usually they're a bunch of words. And you ask people what they mean behaviorally or being, and no one's got a clue. And that's a differentiation today. The great organizations, they don't have values in the sense of words. They have values in the sense of behaviors. There's a huge difference. So I'll open it up there. They were two fascinating insights, but I still can't get that Apple Store's image out of my brain as well. But I'll open it up.
We can line up for about 3 hours if you want to go in there and have a look.
There you go. Being an Apple user from a computer point of view, I'm a Samsung phone person, but I'm an Apple Mac computer person. So fascinating. But let's open it up there and begin today's conversation.
I just have a quick question. Have you been to the store yet, Paul?
Of course.
and how was your experience when you went there?
It's actually amazing. You got to imagine this is in the middle of a pandemic, and you've got to make an appointment to go in, and they have a very efficient way of triaging all the people and the different reasons that they're there at the entrance to the store. And then you're actually escorted everywhere by a personal assistant, shopping assistant, if you like. You're not allowed to just wander freely around the store at this stage. But you could sense the excitement, and as you come up the escalator and you're in the middle of the fishbowl and you've got this 360-degree view of Singapore around you, you know you're in a pretty amazing and probably extremely expensive space.
Is there any stats, Paul, on what it means for the employees themselves in terms of retention and engagement? Not having that financial burden over their head every day around targets and what else?
It's made very clear to them that they're not there to essentially sell products. They're there to provide an experience for their people. Actually, years and years ago, I actually applied for a job at an Apple store and went through the whole process of being interviewed. I had to have about 5 interviews and psycho tests and everything. And it's all about service. It's all about personality. And they just want people who are oozing this enthusiasm and willingness. They don't even care if you're a tech person because they can teach you that. So it's all about helping people and putting solutions in front of customers.
That was the other fascinating thing for me, was this single KPI, or it reminded me, Paul, which you would be very familiar of the Ritz-Carlton's one rule, or the Nordstrom's, stores are famous. They've only got one policy, and that policy is do your best at all times. In their employee manual, it says, number one, it says the rules of our company. Number one, do your best at all times. Number two, refer to rule one. So
I think it really needs to be that simple. Like if you can drill it down to one goal, and then everybody understands the goal, then every decision you make, whether you're in finance or HR or front of house, all needs to support that goal.
The Ritz-Carlton, of course, are famous because they allow their employees to spend up to $2,000 anytime that the employee feels they need to do so in order to enhance the customer experience. That rule's been in place, Paul, as you might know, for 100 years, I think.
Yeah, since the very beginning, and it's never changed, and statistically it doesn't get abused either. So an example of that might be a room attendant cleaning a room and notices that a regular VIP guest has a bottle of Calvin Klein aftershave has got a couple of mils left in it. They're authorised to go out to the pharmacy with their own money, buy them a new one, put it in the room and put in an expense claim for that, because Ritz-Carlton knows that the value of that guest over time is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, not the $80 or $100 that it costs to replace that bottle of aftershave.
So there you go. So what does this mean, Jody, for you in the creative agency business, where most of your clients own wineries or food and beverage places, and you're the guy that helps them with their brand message and so on? So what do all these things mean for you?
Yeah, thanks, Ian. And we talk about experience and engagement a lot in terms of how we instruct our clients to communicate to their clients. And I think many of the clients that are not performing well are those that are process driven, they're production driven, that they feel that because they've made a product, then that product will sell. And because they provide it at a specific price, then that's sufficient for people to purchase. So, you know, for us and our clients, it means a lot. You know, to put it simply, you know, those clients are looking, particularly these days, with a lot of competition. You can talk about wine, you can talk about spirit, you can talk about any product realistically. That they're looking for, you know, that point of difference, and those that are not personable, that don't have close relationships with their clients and offer an experience that is unique, that is different, but is memorable and either can be repeated or improved upon for the next visit. You know, we're seeing some clients that are investing in their staff and investing in the on-site experience, are you know, really performing well in terms of uptake of club members, sales increases at tasting rooms and those types of things. So it means everything.
There you go. So, Paul, now that you've revealed your E's for the first time, I know you and I have chatted about them, but I'm interested, folks, on how they land for you, those E's. Perhaps you could share them again, Paul. We can have another look.
I'll put it back up again.
I like the last one in particular. A good message for leaders. Get the first three right and then get out of the way. So other thoughts on these or anything that Paul's raised so far?
Just a thought. I heard the other day that what was it? You know, we're about a large American coffee chain. They said that you know, we're not in the coffee business. We're in the people business, and spend a lot of time and money training their staff to engage with their customers, to build relationships. So that is, you know, to me, about the experience, but it is about you know, generating new genes. It is a set of behaviours that you know, present you know, real people providing real relationship and benefit. You know, the coffee or the cake or whatever it might be is the byproduct. That's the end deliverable, but
yes,
it's really the experience that counts.
Take us through, Paul, where this idea of genes came from. Perhaps.
So when we, I don't know if I've successfully stopped sharing the screen. Let me just take that off. So when we came up with our genes, which are essentially our values, we didn't just sit in a room and come up with them as a leadership team. We recently surveyed, this was going back to 10 years, we recently surveyed all of our staff about how they felt about working for First Contact, and these were some of the key words that came back in our first employee engagement survey. So things like harmony and service excellence and consistency were words that were very strongly coming back from our own team members about how they felt about the brand that we were building. So we used those to build, and they became our way of being. And these are currently going through a refresh now after 10, 11 years, going through another refresh with the team being led by Kim.
I think it's my most watched video still, but one of the videos on my YouTube channel is called "Are the Values on Your Wall Lived in the Hall?" And it's a short story that I tell about an experience I had with a client once. Because as I say, many organisations have values, but they're usually words. They're not agreed behaviours. And it makes a real difference when they're agreed behaviours, doesn't it, Paul?
Yeah. Another company that I read a lot about and talk about a lot is Disney. And they have that one rule thing again, or that one phrase for their theme parks, which is the most fun place on earth. And there's a book, highlights called Be Our Guest. See that? Maybe just.
It's clashing with your screen background, but yeah.
But
yep.
It's perfecting the art of customer service. It's all about Disney, but it's very much around the employee experience and how the Disney employee experience starts from your very first, when you start looking at joining the company, and the way they interview, and they've built a whole themed experience designed place where people go for their interviews. So as they're waiting for their very first interview, they're already being culturalized into the Disney way of thinking. So before they've even sat down and had that very first interview, they're already having an experience, and then that carries on through their whole career, and it's all sharpened and pointed towards that one outcome, which is the experience and the way service is delivered in those parks.
All right, so Kim, you're in transit. You're excused, but David and Marty, anything to add to what we're talking about here? Brad, anything else to add?
No, I did like the 4 E's, and I mean, so there's been a few words floated around, obviously, and other concepts that all lead to the same place. But I like how it's been simplified into what is the journey. The challenge for some companies will be making that leap of faith, particularly in the latter elements where we talk about getting out of people's ways. We speak about a lot in our organisation, but can the business itself truly live up to that? Because it's what needs to happen. And we generally all hire adults, and we believe we train them well. And if that's the case, why don't we get out of their road? And it's just an observation, and one that you do see across certain organisations. But I am also a massive fan of the Apple methodology, which I wasn't aware of, where they're focusing on that experience. And certainly I'm in a high volume business and a high transactional one. And I made the comment to the team this morning, post what's been a tough time for our industry in terms of COVID. But at what point do we move from what we've fallen into, which is being transactional, and become experience focused or experience based? Because that was a journey we're on, and we lost it through COVID. And I'm probably a little bit empathetic to what our business has been through in relation to it. But at what point do we get back to what is the essence of what we're trying to achieve here?
One way that may help, because all businesses have transactions, but transactions is like a coin. On the other side is interaction. So there's always transactions and interactions. And it's a matter of which side of the coin you're looking at. And if your focus is on transactions all the time, then you don't see the other side of the coin. But if you flip the coin and you look at interactions, different attitude comes from looking at everything as an interaction rather than a transaction. So that's one way that you could play with it in your business, Brad, to help your folk look at the interaction side of the coin rather than the transaction side of the coin.
Yeah, it's certainly a good way of looking at it. And as I mentioned, we like a lot of industries have been through a few challenges, and ours isn't one where COVID's been negative to our enterprise necessarily, but the wave of workload and the volumes have gone up significantly, and in some cases 600, 700, 800%. And so when you get into that position of being challenged, you default to what's going to make that go away as quickly as possible. And so you default to transactional because it's just easy. And so as much as you don't want to let your teams drift away, that's just a reality of what we've been through. My point this morning was about at what point do we stop allowing that to happen, because the business is normalising now. So if we don't arrest that cultural shift, we will have embedded behaviours that we don't want. So for me, it's about trying to close the chapter on where we've been at some time in 2020 so we can go back to 2021. I'll avoid using the word normality, Ian, because I think you and I agree that there's no such thing anymore. But we've just got to reestablish ourselves and go back to what we're all trying to drive prior to the event.
So Paul, how do you see the role of the customer experience becoming even more important? I think you touched on this, but post-COVID, how will customer expectations change? Will they change?
I think a lot of things are changing, and one of the things that's obviously happened here is that so much of what we do has gone online, and people are a bit fatigued of doing everything online, but there are also advantages. So there's some speed and some efficiency and convenience advantages. But what that really means, and let's take the Apple Store analogy. The reason people will go to a shop or even their own office, for example, will be different, and it'll be up to the people running those facilities to provide an experience that makes it worthy of getting out the front door and going somewhere rather than jumping online and doing what you want to do. So I used the analogy the other day that even applies to the workplace, that I think the workplace will become a bit like what the Apple Store is to retail, that people will come to the office for a brand experience, whether that's through collaborating with colleagues or for clients to come to an office to have some kind of brand imprint experience. So the times that people do come together face to face and the places where that happens, I think experience is going to be a key driver for those things.
I think Paul didn't. So we could sort of kind of steal this from Apple, because I think Apple stole their idea from somebody else, didn't they?
Well, they stole it from the Ritz-Carlton. So this book talks a lot about that. They stole their values very much from the Ritz-Carlton. But the other thing we're seeing, particularly being in Asia, huge shift through COVID, because particularly in Asia, there has never been that trust historically. And so there is very much that master-servant relationship where if I'm not standing behind you watching you, then you're not working. And now with everyone being forced into this work from home scenario, I think miles behind Australia, Asia was not ready for that, and certainly Singapore was not ready for that. And companies, particularly managers, really struggled with this concept of having their employees not in eyesight. And that's been the case for 6 to 9 months now. So they're having to learn to adapt very quickly, whereas I think in Australia, work from home has, in many organisations, has been a lot more accepted.
And by the sounds of it, it's people want to stay at home. I think Brad and I were talking yesterday, and I think, Brad, your Melbourne office, which is about 400 people from memory, 90% of them want to stay at home.
Yeah, it's a funny thing because so I called in yesterday for a 10-minute chat, and I think we're on the phone for 2 hours. But I did articulate that we do have 350 odd people in our Melbourne office, and most don't want to come back. And then we had another meeting this morning with a project team, because we've literally got 180 staff in Sydney, and we're going through our return to office plans at the moment. We're about to roll them out for Sydney. And that's upon us. We're going to start bringing a small squad of people back in a week or two. But I've got the issue in Sydney where 95% of what is 180 people want to squeeze back into a building that can now accommodate 100, because obviously I've shrunk the floor plate there. So I've got the exact opposite. And what is the difference between Sydney and Melbourne? I don't know, and I don't know what's in the water, but I've got these two workforces that want to do completely opposite things. And so I've got an abundance of real estate in Melbourne that I can't utilise, and not enough now in Sydney. So we're going through this whole challenge, which might ultimately end up in a position where we've got to start directing people where they want to be. And that's completely at odds with the strategy for us, because we want to make sure we give the flexibility, the option.
So Simone, you've been a similar, but you've got 700 employees, I think, from memory.
Yeah.
Do they all want to stay at home as well?
They're front-facing employees, the majority of them. So
Okay.
they deliver basically experiences to the community and the customer through the delivery of their services. What is interesting though, and these are gym managers who have forever lived their life on the floor, in centres and stuff. I've got some of them saying that they really like the work from home environment to be able to have the flexibility to work from home as well. Not all of the time, because some of them, the narrative they say is nothing makes them feel more alive than walking through the centres whereby there's a couple of thousand people physically exercising and engaging with the service, but they also do like the quietness of the home environment to get stuff done.
So it seems to me like there's going to be a bit of a both and scenario rather than an either or.
Yeah.
Scenario.
One of the things, and I've just been very quiet because I've just been absorbing everything. One of the things that I wanted to put on the table is customer experience is often defined as a lot of moments that matter, and it's the aggregation of those moments that matter. And only really, it's probably started to become topical within the last 2 years around understanding the employee moments that matter and designing the experiences around that. And so what I've seen what you've done there, Paul, is you've actually started to almost journey map your through the 4 E's, your employee experience. But I'm wondering if you could talk maybe a little bit around the moments that matter from an employee perspective, because that often the aggregation of those moments that matter actually create a really exceptional experience or not. And those moments that matter are things exactly like what you've touched on there, has been around the recruitment process and how much, I guess, part of your brand and the experience comes through in that your very first day, how you show up, how you show up at your work and their experience there, which, you know, often a lot of people's first days may or may not go the best as well. And I know employees, and it's fascinating from a COG perspective, when I did a bit of surveying, employees really like to have their birthdays recognised. You know, funny little things like that. So I'm just wondering if you could make some comment around that.
Yes, Simone, I think you've actually nailed the crux of it, because I was working another group that I'm working with, and a person gave me the phrase just yesterday. They referred to the employees as the first customer. And I'd never heard that before, but I'm sure it's been around. I've just never actually heard that phrase before. But they refer to themselves as the first customer of the organisation.
Say that again, Paul, if you would. I just had a little technologically glitch then. Yeah.
So they refer to the employee as the first customer of any organisation.
There you go.
And if you take the principles of customer experience, whether it's personalisation, knowing people, understanding them, using empathy, all of the things that make customer experience hum, and it's every single touch point. So it doesn't matter if you're front of house or back of house. If you're not applying exactly the same thinking to your employee experience, and that is if you don't pay your employees properly, or if they don't have a great welcoming onboarding arrival experience as an employee, if they're not made to feel welcome, made to feel valued and understood in the same way you would think about a customer, you're never going to have this CX cyclical outcome. So they do go absolutely hand in hand, and I think this is where a lot of companies fail, in that they're very focused on the experience their customers have, but if the employees are not being treated similarly to similar values, then it just falls off. There's
a great line from the Japanese industrialist, one of the original Japanese management thinkers. His name was Karu Izukawa from memory. But he said the customer is whoever gets your work next. So it's similar to that.
So it's a simple thing, man. You had a question, but just like if you receive an employee inquiry about their pay or about something, and you don't get back to them with the same urgency that you would get back to a customer, then you're completely giving the employee the message that it doesn't matter.
And that is a moment that matters in an employee's journey map as well.
Absolutely.
And what I find really interesting in all of this, like customer experience has only, I guess, really been around for the last sort of 8 to 10 years as such, getting that understanding, because before 10 years ago, from my understanding, it was all sort of customer service, exceptional customer service. So the narrative and the understanding has been around the customer experience, but the employee experience is still a really relatively new concept as such. It's only been around for 2 years, but it is 2 to 3 years, but it is, and all you need to do is Google to see the plethora of, all of that. When you look at customer service, it goes back years and years versus the experience and that. So it's really interesting, the timeline and the understanding and the interaction between the moments that matter from an employee perspective, and then how that plays out from a customer perspective.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating, I find too, that because a moment is about 90 seconds. So,
I used to call it 60-second solution.
So if you mess it up in this 60 or 90 seconds, you can fix it in the next 60 or 90 seconds. I mean, there's a great book that's been around for many years, and the book was called Moments of Truth. And it was written by Jan Carlson, who at the time was the CEO of Scandinavian Airlines, which is still probably the most famous of the airlines. They were the first people, long before Southwest or Singapore Airlines became famous for their experience. The Scandinavian Airlines were one of the first. I think the book's probably written in the 80s. But anyway, he discovered that there were 50,000 moments of truth every day in the lives of his employees. 50,000. And that every one of them was an opportunity to matter. So it sort of lines up with what you're saying, Simone, about moments that matter. Because really, every moment matters. And if we mess it up, we can make it matter in the next one.
Yeah.
We don't have to,
Another thing that will kill this dead will be having standards that are not achievable. So we have a set of non-negotiable standards. And by non-negotiable, we mean every employee, every shift, every location, every day, these things must happen. And I always used to laugh in hotels, and this has been going on for years. There's a standard, the phone must be answered within 3 rings. Now, I've worked in hotels that were so understaffed that the phone often didn't get answered at all. So as soon as you have a standard that the staff can't achieve, then it puts into question every other standard that you have.
I would love to see standard operating policies and procedures manuals be changed to moments that matter manuals. Because that really is what we're all about, isn't it? Really, we want to make a difference. We want to matter to the human being who's in front of us, or the group of human beings who's in front of us. We want to matter in that moment. And so maybe it's a shift, Paul, of narrative. Like, how do we? So what role do operating procedures and scripts and all those sorts of things? What role do they play in the future?
Mm-hmm. Well, consistency. I think you operating procedures and scripts where appropriate give people the standard to which we have to deliver, so that there is a consistent application of service. The guest comes in on Monday, gets the same service they get on a Wednesday. Saying that, you've got to give people the freedom to do it in their own way. So we don't really use scripts as such. Companies like Singapore Airlines script absolutely everything. There is absolutely no sincerity in that, because you know that the staff are just reading from a memorized script. So we say, this is the standard that we want to deliver, but in most aspects, it's up to you to work out how you want to deliver on that standard. But the standard itself is non-negotiable.
I think that's great. That's a good insight, I think. I mean, and also because you use the word excite, so the things that we're talking about here are ways. And by the way, David's apologising because he's on a noisy train, but he's saying that most of the people that he's talking to actually want to return to the office. So David's Sydney-based as well. So there you go, Brett. That's another Sydneyite. We won't get into the Melbourne-Sydney divide because we could be here for months.
Dave's in Melbourne, actually.
Oh, he's in Melbourne, is he?
They're hanging on for the 19th of October to see if they're allowed to do anything.
Okay, yeah, that's right. He actually says in the chat that, yeah, the 19th of October will be an interesting date. So thanks for that insight and input, David, and hopefully the train ride, the noisy train ride's over soon. So, Paul, tell us, you've talked a lot about the relationship between the customer experience and the employee experience. I actually think the employee experience is the most important myself, because it seems to me that if we get the employee experience right, then the customer experience will follow. What's your thoughts around this?
Yeah, 100%. I think it all comes down to that destination statement or that ultimate goal, and getting your customers, whether it's through culture, through reward and recognition, through the way you recruit, having people who ultimately buy into that core purpose. Why are we here? Because they're not just at work to earn a wage. Where are they adding value? How are they adding value? And how does that contribute to the ultimate goal? So if our ultimate goal is to provide amazing experiences for employees in their workplace, which is first contact, then everything they do is somehow linked back to that ultimate goal. And so if we're not investing in that, then we almost can't do anything else.
And how do you suggest folks go about that? I think it's a good thing. How do they go about that?
So it goes back to the 4 E's. I think it starts with recruiting the right people. And if you've got people on your team that don't care about the ultimate goal, then that's where you need to start. But once you have them, then it's about nurturing that key message. So whether it's through newsletters, through a reward and recognition program. So our reward and recognition program is tied back to those 5 Gs. So what we're essentially doing is rewarding the type of behaviour that we want to see repeated through small rewards. So it's almost like feeding children candy, but we are rewarding a behaviour that we want to see more of. And that creates a cycle of more of that behaviour, which then gets celebrated. And then it gets supported through all of our communication channels. So it just becomes a language.
I'm interested where technology fits with all this, Paul, as well, and folks in the room. It seems to me that my own personal perspective, I'm interested in technology that enhances the human experience. I'm not interested in technology that doesn't enhance the human experience.
And that's the key. We've always had an interesting challenge, which is that our employees are spread out everywhere. They're in every state of Australia and now in Singapore. Some of them work on their own in a site. So how we continually reinforce those messages is through a combination of technology. We have our own internet portal, which is a bit like a social media channel that our employees go to for information, and we constantly reinforce messages through that, through newsletters, through visitation, through personal visits and one-on-one chats. And when the world allows us, through gatherings, bringing teams together for things like employee awards ceremonies and things. So we're using every available opportunity, and technology plays a part, but it doesn't play a huge part for us in how we deliver that message. But when we do have that remote workforce of people situated all over the place, it is an important tool.
Yes, I noticed one thing that you do at First Contact. I think it's every Friday, if I'm not mistaken, but there's a LinkedIn post that highlights your best employees for that particular week.
Yeah, I love it. It's one of Kim's initiatives, I think, and I've seen a competitor, as it's Feedback Fridays, and I've seen a competitor in the UK has started doing Thank You Thursdays, and the CEO of that company emailed me and said he was just ripping off our idea. I thought it was that good.
There you go. I think it's a wonderful thing. I've liked it several times because of the way it's laid out. So Kim, if you're online, that was your initiative. Well done you. But I think it's laid out well. As I say, it stands out. That's why I've liked it a number of times. But the point is it's highlighting the employees. You know, it's about them.
Yeah.
And obviously someone else has stole it from you. Then what's that great book? Please Steal My Idea, or
Yeah. So speaking of crediting ideas, I don't know if David can speak because he's on a train, but I'm try and throw him in the spotlight because he came up with an idea years ago that we call a Go meeting. And I don't know if David can contribute, but if he can't, might ask Marty to.
Marty's in transit as well. So
Marty's in transit as well.
That's why they're just their names. But
yeah,
David,
So,
David, you might put something in the chat box if you can. Paul's asking about, what was it again, Paul?
called a Go meeting, which stands for goals and outcomes, and it's essentially what we did was flip appraisals on its head. And have an employee initiated. Yeah, Dave's just chatted and said he can't talk, so I'll talk on his behalf because it was his initiative, and it's something that
He's
we
saying he's occupied on the train at the moment, so you speak on his behalf. Yep.
Yeah, so we use this very powerfully, and that's rather than having an employee appraisal at a time that the company schedules when it's convenient for us to give someone some feedback. These are employee-initiated chats around questions like, how are you enjoying your current role? What's the next role for you? What are your goals? How can we help you get there? This is a variation on an idea that you guys seed that you planted with us years ago, Ian, and we took that and essentially David came in with the goals and outcomes meeting, or the Go meeting, and that's a core way again for us just to reinforce the values and then work with our team members on delivering both company goals and personal goals.
Wonderful thing. I mean, if you're still doing employee appraisals, then that's probably the worst thing you could ever do for your employee's experience. Because I've never met a human being in my life who wanted to be appraised. I met a whole bunch of people who wanted to be appreciated, but no one wants to be appraised. And there's evidence now, you just got to Google this. There's evidence now that appraisals are bad for employees' mental health. There's a stack of evidence. Just Google it.
Guess what I've been doing today? Working on mine ready for tomorrow. And it's been a headache.
Yeah, I feel sorry for you in that environment, but you're just the person who can make some changes there.
It's trying.
Imagine, Simone, if you could have that conversation at a time when you felt that you had something to say, rather than when your boss wanted to hear.
David,
I've always got something to say.
David is just saying in relation to the Go meeting or the goals and outcomes meeting that it was someone that gave employees the power to control the timing of the feedback, which makes it useful and something to build on, which I think is a great insight. And that's, as most of you know, the one-page plans that I help people to develop. The whole reason behind those plans is that they are conversation tools. They're conversation focusing tools. And that's the key. I mean, we've talked, those that have been regulars on these conversations, we've talked regularly about this wonderful line from David White, the poet and philosopher. David said that in leadership, the conversation is not about the work, the conversation is the work. And I think that's this whole employee experience. It's fundamentally seeing and acknowledging and appreciating the one of a kind human being who's in front of you. It's helping them to bring their essence, their best to their work. And if they feel valued and they feel appreciated, then pretty much every human being who feels valued and who feels appreciated is going to bring their best to their work. That's going to enhance the experience, and that rolls on to the customer experience. And like a snowball, it gathers snow, becomes unstoppable.
And I think it's also worth accepting that there is no perfect outcome. There's no perfect scenario here. Sometimes we hire the wrong people. Sometimes we hold on to the wrong people. Sometimes we fail to engage them, and through experience and through years, we get better and better, and we refine what we're doing. So we can definitely say we're getting it right more than we're getting it wrong.
How do you balance empowerment, getting out of the way of people, and your rules or your boundaries? How do you keep that in perspective?
Well, it's having those non-negotiable standards and having people know that they are absolutely exactly what it says, non-negotiable. So there is no room to move on our grooming and image policy, or on our greetings and communication policy, or on attendance policy. There's no leeway in those things. And I think if people know straight up that those are the boundaries, but then we're giving you the freedom to operate within those boundaries and be yourself. But yeah, I mean, Kim will tell you, we still have to have those conversations with people quite frequently.
Interesting question I often pose to clients when I see them for the first time is, do you have boundaries or barriers? Are your policies and procedures barriers to people doing their best and bringing their best to the work? Or are they boundaries that give them a clear operating field? It's like on a sporting field, the boundary's there for a reason. I think it's a great analogy for a business. Your boundary should be like it is on a sporting field, but it shouldn't be a barrier.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting conversation to have, and to look at your policies and procedures and ask the question, is this a barrier to my employee bringing their best to their work? Or is it a boundary that protects them and helps them and means that we keep our standards?
Interesting. That's an interesting analogy to footy player, because you play the game to the best of your ability, but you've still got to wear the uniform.
That's it. Perfect example. Yep.
What I'm interested in is measurement. How do you go about measuring employee experience, or how do you know that employee experience is good? And then how do you know that customer experience is good?
So we don't use a lot of technical measurement, but fundamentally, when you look at the results and the outcome, certainly client feedback is a very important one for us, but the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we use that feedback very frequently. Obviously, then looking at things like our client retention, and we've been running 95% client retention for years, and then new acquisitions. And I've always said with this kind of, we don't have a sales department. No one in First Contact has the title with sales in it, but we allow our performance and our outcomes and our own clients, in many cases, and our own employees to do the selling for us. So I think what I'm really trying to say there is, if you follow these core principles, and especially the 4 E's, then you can measure the success of that in the results. And then, of course, there's the traditional measures, things like employee retention, employee turnover. In every industry, there are different benchmarks. So as long as you're achieving and exceeding those benchmarks for your own space, then you have a feel of how you're doing in those areas.
So is there, Paul, is there an ROI, or return on investment, on customer or employee experience?
100%. And then that return on investment is in reduced turnover costs, in higher employee engagement, in client retention and client referrals, which are huge. Having your clients essentially validating and referring your brand, which also leads to clients who are willing to spend more money with you. All of those things have a direct either revenue or expense result, so that goes straight to the bottom line. And ultimately, through creating the type of both customer and employee loyalty that you're seeking, it actually enhances the value of your business and the value of your brand.
One of the interesting insights you're pointing to there, Paul, is that in a 21st century organization, ROI is an outcome, not a reason.
100%.
In a 21st century business, profit is an outcome of being good at business, but never a reason for being in business.
And that goes right back to the Apple Store example. They don't talk about sales or profitability at store level. They just talk about how good an experience are we providing.
Because sales is a consequence. I mean, I think sales is a 20th century word that's dead and ought to be eliminated from the lexicons. I think
they're not having a problem with revenue.
Measurements is probably another word that the narrative needs to move, I suggest, Simone. It's kind of an old word. And maybe it's been replaced by the Apples and Disneys of this world by standards. So everyone's clear of the standard, and that's got more value than the measurement. I mean, in the old days, 20th century, we used to talk about lead and lag measures. And the most important ones were, of course, the lead measures.
Still do in many organisations.
Okay. So maybe it's that, so it's the things that lead to, because the great organisations are not focused on outcomes. Everyone's clear on what the outcomes are. They're focused on the process to get there, or in other words, they're focused on the lead measures, not the lag measures, because the lag measures are a consequence. And I think it's what you're saying, Paul, that if we get the employee experience right, we'll get the customer experience right, and standards are playing an important part, boundaries are playing an important part.
If you look at the most successful businesses in the world, none of them are driven by a profit target or a revenue target.
Not too sure whether that's true.
That's a consequence of the value that they add through experience.
It's a deep insight. Jody, I see you deep in thought there.
I'm just trying to think who those companies might be.
Oh, I think
and wonder whether those they would change if they're not making a profit.
Interesting. Amazon didn't make a profit for a decade or more. He deliberately had a business model that didn't make a profit. Didn't seem to matter to the investors of the time. I'm not too sure that's the case now with Amazon, but it certainly was the case for the first decade.
It was the old story. Was it Bob Ansett when he started Budget Rent-A-Car, and he couldn't afford enough cars to build his business, so he used to rent cars from the competitor at a higher price than he was selling them for, just so that he'd never have to say no to a customer.
There's some legendary stories. Just speaking on Amazon, mate, as you know, my Change What's Normal book went on Amazon on the end of August, and the Kindle version was up a week ago. And it's already selling, by the way, so just a little private moment of joy. But I ordered, not my own book, but I ordered a book on Amazon. I normally get my books through Book Depository, which is an Amazon-owned organisation in the UK. They're the best people I've ever come across to deliver books, even though it's all the way from the UK. Sometimes it comes from the Australian warehouse, but I ordered one direct from Amazon recently. And within 2 seconds, so because I've got an Amazon account, it was because I do order Kindles on Amazon. I had an email within 4 seconds confirming my order. 7 minutes later, I got another email from Amazon to tell me when the book would be delivered to my home, the date, because this particular case was a pre-order. And then it was about 6 weeks before it was actually published. Every week, I got a reminder that the book was coming and when it was coming. And then the week that it was due, I got another email from Amazon to tell me that my book was looking good and it was on time and it would be delivered precisely when they said it was going to be. And then on that day, I got a text from Australia Post to say that my book would be delivered that afternoon. And then I got another text from Amazon confirming that. And then the very moment that the book arrived at my front door, I got a text from Amazon telling me that my book had arrived. I reckon that's how it's done, don't you?
As long as you can deliver on the expectations that you're setting through the process. If that book arrived a day later than they said it was going to, then you've got a problem.
Just giving you my experience of the recent times. The very second that the guy delivered the book to the door and he was writing on his computer, I got a text message from Amazon to say, "Congratulations, your book's arrived." I mean, I was absolutely blown away.
Is that the experience you wanted to have, though, Ian? Is it too much communication for some?
Yeah, good question, Jody.
Can you control that?
Good question. I guess I probably felt as an analyst having a look, I probably felt this is over the top. But as a customer, I felt valued.
If you've ever had to return something from Amazon, it sets an expectation in your mind that why doesn't every other company work like this? Because they will refund your money before you've sent the item back in good faith that you will send the item back or send you a replacement.
What's other thoughts? I mean, I know recently my computer crashed and I had to get a new one, and the experience from Apple was terrible. Absolutely terrible. So much so that I almost didn't. I love having an Apple computer, but it was so bad. I almost.
Apple,
Yeah.
That's part of their business model, though, because they're running off their brand as such, that it doesn't matter if you have a bad experience with your computer. They're just like, that is actually inbuilt into their mentality, because I've had the same experience, but it is actually built into their mentality that they'll go, well, it doesn't matter, you're going to still go out and buy yourself an iPhone or an Apple computer. But I was so disgusted by it at the time, because I was 1 month out of warranty when I broke my Apple computer, that I've never bought an Apple computer because of it. Although I do have an iPhone.
I had the reverse thing. I got so sick of a problem I had with an iPhone that I'd never have one again. But I resisted this time. I did buy an Apple computer again, but the service was just appalling. It drove me mad so much that I almost cancelled the order. It's just that I like Microsoft even less, and so I stayed with the Mac. But I guess what we're talking about here is a lot of things about our own experience. So, I mean, Brad, Simone, Jody, anyone who's on the train or whatever, do you stay loyal because you've had a wonderful experience, or do you let go as soon as you've had a bad one? I mean, what's the thing, and what's happening in your own organisation around this?
I think in terms of the Apple piece, though, generally speaking, my experiences have been okay, but they're very good at building a community that it's hard to leave, and you've got to be honest about that. They find ways of tethering you to the experience forever, and the pain or the inconvenience of change is so great that even if you weren't happy, there's a large cohort of people out there just tolerate it anyway. So I think that's something we all need to be conscious of. But again, this journey that we're all going through at the moment in particular, I'm reasonably tech savvy for somebody of my age, but geez, I'm learning a lot and finding a lot and tools and things at your disposal. And phones is probably a little bit off to the side. I'll park the Apple Samsung debate, for example, but there's a lot of technology out there that I think people will become increasingly agnostic if the experience isn't good. And that's what I think will be a continuing trend, I would have thought.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, Marty is saying online that most people are going to stay loyal because it's too hard to change when it comes to technology. I think that's a good point.
Well, the thing is, I've got 2 teenage kids and a wife, and we all have iPads, we all have iPhones. So you park the cost, just the need to change all of that, and then obviously my iPhone also serves as a work tool. It just becomes too hard. But my experiences aren't that bad, and nor am I frustrated at the level that I'm going to explore either.
So a couple of polar opposites with in terms of experience and empowerment. So I've had a few great experiences in Apple stores where I've literally gone in with an iPhone that wasn't doing the right thing and walked out with a brand new phone, and I only had to speak to one person. So that person's obviously empowered to assess and make that decision and go at the back and come out with a brand new phone for you. And the polar opposite of that, I checked out of a hotel here last week, and there was some debate around whether my car parking was included. We're talking about $12. It took 3 staff members 20 minutes to establish that I should get that, not pay that $12.
It obviously wasn't the Ritz-Carlton.
No, it wasn't, but it just showed that nobody on that desk had any empowerment whatsoever to write off a $12 parking fee.
Isn't it sort of weird in a way that they're the things that we remember more than perhaps the good experience? I mean, that's maybe a psych thing. I don't know. It just seems, I mean, because we're just out of sort of lockdown a bit here. Karen and I think we've coffee shopped 3 times this week because we can, but it's just, I found it interesting that in each of the 3 coffee shops we've been to, and it's only Wednesday, so I reckon we'll be going at least another 2 times before the end of the week. But 3 different places we've been to before, places we like. I found that both of us were expecting a greater experience than we actually got. I mean, there was nothing wrong with the experience, but we were talking in the car on the way home actually yesterday. We both expected more than we received. Isn't that weird? Because we haven't been in a coffee shop for ages. I'm certainly not able to sit down in one, and we both had higher expectations. What do you reckon, folks? Is this going to be a trend post-corona?
I have seen an increase from what I would see. It has been as consumers and customers are getting more potentially savvy or understanding of what experience is as well. What I have seen is a general trend over the last how many years of increasing expectations. So, and I think COVID has possibly maybe even accelerated that in some ways as well. That there is an increase in customer expectations of the experience that they will receive. I'm not sure though how many businesses have been savvy enough to understand that either.
I think that's a moot point, that one, Simone, and I'm not too sure. We did happen to talk to the owner of one of the coffee shops about this the day before, and he was certainly onto it. He's been having pep talks with his staff to sort of say, that the customer expectation is higher than it's ever been, and we've got to be sharp and on it.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. We've got a couple of rentals. And we had a real estate, and they were all right. They gave us what I would say all right experience, except for one of the tenants that they placed into one of our rentals who had basically brought rats into the place, pet rats that then ate various items in the house. So at that time, we had another real estate sort of almost courting us in a way, and we thought, well, we went across with them based on price, but they promised to deliver exceptional experience. So an example being was when we're moving out in October last year, and we weren't sure what we would do with the house, and we thought, oh well, we'll just put it up for rent. She said the 2 days before the new tenants were due to move in, oh, you guys probably need to mow the lawn. It's looking a little bit overgrown. All right, because you're into the new house. And she said, don't worry, I'll get it done. She goes, I'm going to send my son over and he's going to mow the lawn for you guys. And I went, okay, this is like, we're like, okay. And in a similar way, we got a bit of work done on the property in the last month that will require us to potentially go out and do some painting. And she said, don't worry about it. My partner's a painter. We've got the paint sample. We'll go match it. He'll go paint the sample pot. No worries, no cost to you. And so we look at that, and I think there are companies like that that are delivering exceptional experiences like that. And these are, particular moments that matter to us, because otherwise we have to go and arrange to do it, or it will be a cost to us. And so the companies that are really clever in that experience thing is also uplifting consumers' expectations or customers' expectations, that you're going to be able to, all companies should be doing that.
I think it's a question for you, Paul, but I think for all of us. So the bar's been raised. The bar, I think, is going to be continued to be raised. Where does it end? Does everyone, come right? I'm at that wonderful saying that a rising tide lifts all ships. Is that going to be the case, that everyone's lifted, therefore we're all going to be better, or are some people really going to, some business is going to fall by the wayside here? What's your thoughts, folks?
I've also been concerned that as expectations continue to get higher and higher, the costs of things also get higher and higher. Because yes, everyone wants everything delivered today or tomorrow at the latest. There's obviously a cost to that.
That's probably a good sort of place, because we're coming to the top of our time. So before we get there, because I'm going to, as I always do, I'll give the special guest Paul the last word. But before we get there, are there any other comments, questions, observations before we give Paul the last word? All right, so just let me say a little ad for Simone, because next month Simone is our special guest, and in fact, as I press the stop record button on today, Simone's registration page on Eventbrite will become open at 5 o'clock, so you can go and register for Simone's session next month. Very, very soon. But Simone's our special guest next month, so we look forward to that. Simone's going to talk about living a fulfilled life. So it's going to be a wonderful session. Hope to see you all on the line then. But today, thanks for joining us, Paul from Singapore. I think it's been a great conversation, and we are now, I think Simone, we're raising the bar for these conversations. So no doubt you will continue to raise the bar next time.
I'll do my very best. And
just so you know, following Simone, I've got the wonderful Colin James joining us in November, and I've just started lining things up for next year, and I've got the incredible, one-of-a-kind Dr. Jason Fox is our special guest in January, and then David Deanspread, who's a leadership development guy in Western Australia, who at once upon a time was a counterintelligence agent. He's a fascinating guy, and he's my guest in February. And then Simone is back in March with a different topic. And Paul, no doubt we'll have you again sometime next year. And I'll be zeroing in on Brad and Jody, I think, at some point as well. But anyway, let's give Paul the last word. And thanks, Paul, for a wonderful session.
Thanks, Ian, for having me, and everyone. I think zero in on your destination statement. What do you want your customers to feel about the service they're getting from you? And then let that drive everything else.
Take us through why you call it a destination statement.
I guess all journeys end at a destination. I'm not saying we ever get there, but that's where we're going. We're going to keep working or keep driving towards the elusive sunset, which is the way we want our customers to feel about us.
Yeah, I think it's a great question to ask. I think it also helps a lot of your customers and clients, Jody, when you're talking the branding, messaging, and so on. It's an interesting way, zero in on that end. You know, what did Covey say? Begin with the end in mind. I
don't think you ever really arrive there. I think it just, because expectations keep changing, you just keep heading in that direction.
But it's a nice question to ask, though. How do you feel? How do you want to feel?
It's of course a part of the for those online involved in the heart leadership space. That's the key. We're talking feelings before thoughts. We're suggesting that thoughts follow feelings. And it taps into, you know, research in neuroscience. I've mentioned a couple of times in these conversations, Dr. Jill Bolte. She says we're feeling creatures who think. And I think that's a wonderful insight to our topic today. Because to deliver the experience, we've got to see the human in front of us. And we've got to, first of all, be concerned with how they feel, because we know that will help them in how they think. And of course, you know, behavior follows thinking. So it lines up with all the research, what you've been saying, Paul, lines up with all the psychological and philosophical research. I think it's been a great insight for us all, but also it highlights the challenges. You know, the expectations are higher, therefore the delivery's tougher.